Queen Liratha of the Zorellian Empire stood tall and resplendent on the ceremonial dais, her 4 arms extended in the traditional gesture of welcome. The phosphorescent patterns swirling across her azure skin pulsed with a royal intensity that commanded attention from every being in the grand hall. And from my observation post among the royal historians, I could sense her nervousness, something only a Zorellian could detect in the subtle flicker of her secondary breathing gills. And thus she proclaimed in that resonant, multi-toned voice that all Zorellians found so soothing, "We welcome our human allies to the 7th Grand Convocation of Interstellar Species." The assembled dignitaries, a rainbow of tentacles, exoskeletons, and appendages from 17 star systems, clicked, whistled, and hummed their approval. All except the humans, of course. They just made that bizarre percussion sound with their forelimbs smacking together. Applause, they called it. Primitively charming, in a way. Ambassador Jake Mercer stood closer to Queen Liratha than protocol typically allowed. The human was embarrassingly pink and disturbingly symmetrical, with only 2 arms and 2 legs, like some kind of unfinished evolutionary prototype. We Zorellians had initially mistaken humans for prey animals when we first encountered them. No natural predator would expose so much vulnerable skin or possess such feeble sensory capabilities. No one noticed the subtle shimmer in the air near the royal balcony, a telltale sign of a cloaking device. No one. That is, except the human. "Your Majesty, get down," Mercer shouted, lunging forward with shocking speed. The ceremonial arrows tipped with neurotoxin that could penetrate even Zorellian hide whispered through the air with deadly precision. 3 projectiles, aimed directly at our Queen's primary heart. What happened next defied all logical protocols of self-preservation. The human placed himself between the Queen and certain death. The first arrow struck Mercer's shoulder, the second his lower torso. The third he actually caught in his hand, though the barbed tip sliced through his fragile skin like solar radiation through a faulty shield. Red human blood so much thinner than our purple ichor splattered across the Queen's ceremonial robes. Mercer collapsed at her feet, his breathing labored. The Great Hall erupted in chaos. Security drones swarmed. The would-be assassin was vaporized before identification could be established. But all I could focus on was the Queen's face as she knelt beside the fallen human. Her expression was one I'd never documented in all my years as royal historian, pure, unadulterated astonishment. "Why?" she whispered in heavily accented standard Galactic. "Why would you do this?" Mercer, pale and shaking from the toxin already spreading through his system, actually smiled. "Just doing my job, Your Majesty. Tuesday diplomacy, am I right?" The audacity. The absurdity. The humanity. We Zorellians first encountered humans exactly 5.37 solar cycles ago, or 5 years as they insist on measuring time with their baffling imprecision. Our survey vessel, the Luminous Dominion, detected their primitive warp signature near the Cygnus arm. Captain Nexara made first contact, and her initial report to the High Council was, frankly, hilarious. The creatures appear to be sentient despite having evolved on a death world with over 70% dihydrogen monoxide coverage, she reported. They possess no natural armor, no redundant organs, minimal regenerative capabilities, and physical strength approximately 1/8 of a standard Zorellian adult. Yet somehow they've achieved faster than light travel without destroying themselves. What Captain Nexara failed to include in her report, something we all learned soon enough, was the humans' bizarre tendency toward what they call heroism and we call suicidal behavior lacking any evolutionary advantage. During the Second Contact Summit, a failure in our atmospheric regulators flooded the conference chamber with trace amounts of methane. While our delegates simply activated their secondary breathing systems, the human representatives began to lose consciousness. Did they flee? No. Did they prioritize their strongest specimens? Also no. Instead, they organized a rescue chain where each human endangered themselves to save others, with their physically weakest member coordinating the effort. Absolutely perplexing. After establishing formal diplomatic relations, both governments agreed to exchange ambassadors. Jake Mercer, despite being neither the oldest nor physically most imposing human, was selected to represent Earth. His psychological profile revealed exceptional empathy and adaptability traits our xenopsychologists found intriguing, if ultimately impractical. Upon his arrival at the royal court, Mercer committed 17 protocol violations in his first cycle. He apologized for 16 of them, but insisted that referring to Queen Liratha by her formal title of Her Magnificent Luminescence, Destroyer of Chaos, Bringer of Celestial Order, was a bit much, and shortened it to Your Majesty. Surprisingly, the Queen permitted this breach, claiming it was refreshingly direct. Meanwhile, political unrest had been brewing in our outer colonies. A faction calling themselves the Void Fangs' melodramatic name, typical terrorist lack of imagination, had begun attacking royal outposts. Their leader, Commander Kraz, a disgraced former royal guardian, claimed the alliance with humans was contaminating our genetic purity and imperial traditions. Humans are a contagion of chaos, Kraz proclaimed in his manifestos. Their unpredictability threatens the cosmic order. Their physical weakness will infect our evolutionary path. The Void Fangs gained support among the more traditional noble houses who feared human influence. Some even whispered that Queen Liratha's increasing fascination with human culture, she had begun consuming their action movies at an alarming rate, was evidence of mental deterioration. What none of us anticipated was how Ambassador Mercer's ridiculous human tendencies would ultimately prove Commander Kraz both right and wrong simultaneously. Humans were indeed unpredictable, but that unpredictability would soon save our entire civilization, beginning with our queen. And all because humans, despite having the survival instincts of particularly dim-witted prey, will throw themselves in front of projectile weapons without a moment's hesitation. The attack happened in 4.2 standard seconds. I've reviewed the security hologram 126 times and still cannot comprehend the human's reaction speed. The cloaked assassin, later identified as Vosnik, a Void Fang operative, materialized on the upper balcony. Most beings wouldn't have noticed the slight visual distortion, but somehow Mercer did. By the time the first arrow launched, the human was already moving. Here's what should have happened. Queen Liratha would have been struck by all 3 arrows, her primary heart punctured, her neural system overwhelmed by toxin, and the Zorellian Empire thrown into chaos. That's basic physics and probability. Here's what actually happened. A soft, fleshy human with reaction time that defies explanation hurled himself through space in direct contradiction of his species' survival instinct. The first arrow struck Mercer's left shoulder, penetrating 8.3 centimeters into muscle tissue. The second hit his lower abdomen, narrowly missing his single, pathetically unprotected liver. The third arrow, and this is the part that still causes arguments among the royal guard, he intercepted with his hand. The neurotoxin-laced tip sliced through his palm, but he managed to deflect its trajectory away from the Queen. Security breach. Royal Protection Protocol Alpha. Captain Dorn of the Royal Guard bellowed, far too late to be of any actual use. The Queen's face displayed an emotion I've never seen in our species' extensive emotional catalog as she knelt beside the bleeding human. Was it concern? Admiration? Something else entirely? Medical team to the Grand Hall immediately, she commanded, her voice unusually unmodulated. Ambassador Mercer, despite having deadly toxin coursing through his circulatory system, actually attempted to stand. "I'm fine, Your Majesty. Just a flesh wound, though I could use a band-aid. Maybe 3. Then he collapsed, unconscious, proving that even heroic humans have biological limits. The next 26 hours were unprecedented in Zorellian medical history. Our physicians had never treated a human for neurotoxin exposure. Dr. Ninara, our leading xenobiologist, frantically consulted the limited human medical database. Their circulatory system is completely exposed. No protective chitin layer, no toxin filtering nodules, not even basic venom resistance. How does this species survive on their own planet? She demanded of nobody in particular. The Royal Medical Suite became a chaotic laboratory of emergency innovation. They synthesized a human-compatible antidote by modifying our standard treatments and while simultaneously trying to replenish his lost blood, a substance we couldn't simply replicate in our medical synthesizers. Queen Liratha refused to leave the medical chamber, breaking centuries of royal protocol. She sat beside the unconscious human, her posture rigid with an emotion our language lacks a precise term for. He will survive, she stated, not a question but a command to the universe itself. Dr. Ninara's neck frills flattened in distress. Your Magnificence, his system is extraordinarily primitive. The toxin is designed to attack neural pathways. In our people, it would cause temporary paralysis, but in humans. He will survive, the Queen repeated, all four of her hands clenched. And somehow, defying medical probability, he did. 3 days later, Ambassador Mercer regained consciousness. His first words, croaked through damaged vocal cords, "Did we get the bad guy?" When informed that the assassin had been vaporized by royal security, he actually looked disappointed. Shame. Would have liked to ask him some questions. The Queen's personal physician, Dr. Telix, monitored Mercer's recovery with growing puzzlement. His healing rate is both too slow and too fast simultaneously. Too slow compared to our regenerative capabilities, yet remarkably fast for his species' baseline. More baffling still was the human's attitude toward pain. When asked to rate his discomfort on our standard 200-point discomfort scale, he shrugged, then winced from the movement. Maybe a 6 out of 10? I've had worse hangovers. Dr. Telix's report to the Royal Medical Academy noted, human pain tolerance appears to be inversely proportional to their physical durability. They feel pain intensely yet dismiss it casually. They heal slowly yet act as if they expect to be functional immediately. They acknowledge their fragility yet behave as if they believe themselves indestructible. In short, they make no biological sense whatsoever. But what truly perplexed the royal court wasn't Mercer's survival, it was Queen Liratha's behavior. For 6 consecutive days, she conducted state business from the medical chamber, her attention divided between imperial matters and the recovering human. The royal historian records note that she even attempted to feed him personally when he regained consciousness, a ritual previously reserved for royal mates. Something fundamental had changed in the relationship between our species, catalyzed by 3 arrows and one incomprehensibly brave human. By the 4th day of Ambassador Mercer's recovery, half the Royal Scientific Academy had petitioned for access to observe him. Queen Liratha denied most requests, but permitted a select research team led by Grand Scientist Pavora to conduct non-invasive studies. Ambassador Mercer, Pavora began, her scientific appendages twitching with barely contained excitement. We must discuss your augmentations. The human blinked slowly. My what now? Your biological enhancements, she clarified, as if speaking to a particularly dim hatchling. The cybernetic or genetic modifications that allow you to perform feats beyond baseline human capabilities. Mercer laughed, then grimaced as the movement pulled at his healing wounds. I don't have any augmentations. I'm just a regular human. The scientific team exchanged glances of disbelief. Senior researcher Muvik actually activated his optical enhancers to scan Mercer more thoroughly. Impossible, Muvik declared. Our analysis of your reaction time during the assassination attempt indicates processing speeds 28% faster than documented human averages. Your biological system must contain undisclosed technological components. It's called adrenaline, Mercer explained. It's a hormone. When humans are scared or stressed, our bodies release it, and it temporarily makes us faster and stronger. The scientists stared at him with what I can only describe as polite skepticism. You expect us to believe, Pavora said slowly, that your endocrine system randomly floods your body with performance-enhancing chemicals without any conscious control or technological regulation? Pretty much, yeah. And this uncontrolled chemical surge doesn't damage your organs. Well, long-term stress isn't great for us, but... And then you willingly placed yourself in a lethal situation based on an instinctual response rather than a calculated decision? Mercer shrugged his good shoulder. I saw someone in danger and reacted. That's just human nature. The research team departed in visible confusion, muttering about evolutionary disadvantages and statistical improbabilities. Their subsequent report to the Academy was titled Human Biological Paradox, Evolutionary Defects or Elaborate Deception? Queen Liratha visited during the evening cycle when the medical staff was reduced to minimal monitoring. These visits became increasingly frequent and unusually informal. Your scientists think I'm hiding something, Mercer told her during one such visit. They don't believe humans would naturally evolve to protect others at personal risk. The Queen's luminescence dimmed thoughtfully. In Zorellian evolution, such traits would have been selected against. Self-sacrifice without reproductive benefit contradicts evolutionary efficiency. Maybe evolution isn't always about efficiency, Mercer suggested. Sometimes it's about connection. Connection, the Queen repeated, as if tasting an exotic food. Your species places great value on this concept. We do? It's why we explore space, why we seek out other civilizations. It's why a person might jump in front of arrows to save someone they respect. Respect, she echoed, her secondary breathing gills fluttering in what I would later learn was embarrassment. Is that what motivated your actions, Ambassador? Respect? Mercer studied her face for a long moment. That was part of it. And the other part? Let's just say humans are complicated. The Queen actually laughed, a sound so rare that the medical monitors registered it as a potential respiratory distress event. On that point, Ambassador, our species finally finds agreement. During subsequent visits, they discussed everything from Earth's bizarre climatic variations to Zorellian poetry. The Queen even attempted to learn human jokes, though she found the concept of deliberate linguistic misdirection for entertainment purposes ethically questionable. What none of us realized then was that these private conversations were laying the groundwork for an unprecedented diplomatic development, one that would scandalize traditionalists and revolutionize interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. The Void Fangs had catastrophically miscalculated. Their assassination attempt had been predicated on two assumptions: that humans were weak, predictable creatures, and that their death would demonstrate the folly of alliance with Earth. Both assumptions proved spectacularly wrong. Commander Kraz's subsequent transmission to his followers revealed their dismay. The humans' actions defy rational analysis. No species should willingly accept mortal risk for another without guaranteed genetic benefit. This suggests either mass deception about human capabilities or a fundamental instability that makes them more dangerous than previously assessed. The Royal Intelligence Service intercepted this transmission and distributed it throughout military command. General Darzik, who had previously dismissed humans as decorative diplomats with delusions of relevance, immediately requested a comprehensive review of human military history. 3 days later, his report to the High Council was uncharacteristically blunt. I recommend immediate expansion of joint military exercises with human forces. Their unpredictability appears to be a strategic advantage rather than a weakness. If one unarmed diplomat could disrupt a precisely calculated assassination, imagine what a coordinated human military unit might accomplish. Across the Empire, public opinion shifted with startling speed. The royal data streams were flooded with discussions about the human shield and endless replays of the security footage. Ambassador Mercer's popularity surged beyond anything a non-Zorellian had ever achieved in our recorded history. The human protected our queen when our own security failed became a common refrain in public forums. Commemorative, iridescent body markings mimicking Mercer's wound patterns became fashionable among younger Zorellians, a trend the Medical Academy publicly condemned as anatomically misleading and culturally inappropriate. The diplomatic implications were equally dramatic. Three major galactic powers who had been hesitant to engage with humans suddenly requested bilateral talks with Earth representatives. The Cygnus Concordat, which had dismissed humans as evolutionary dead ends, now classified them as unpredictably valuable allies. Most significantly, the Queen's political opponents within the noble houses found themselves suddenly without support. For decades, traditionalists like House Vertax had blocked progressive reforms by citing ancient protocols and evolutionary purity. Now, their arguments against human alliance sounded hollow. During the emergency Noble Council following the assassination attempt, Lady Vertax attempted her usual obstructionism. We cannot allow one anomalous incident to influence generations of established policy. Humans remain fundamentally incompatible with. The Queen interrupted a breach of protocol so shocking that the council recording shows several nobles' illumination patterns temporarily extinguishing in surprise. Lady Vertax, Queen Liratha said, her voice carrying that rare harmonious resonance that only appears when a Zorellian monarch invokes ancient authority. Would you have preferred that the assassination succeeded? Would the preservation of your established policy be worth the cost of your monarch's life? The chamber fell silent. Lady Vertax's primary eyes widened, her secondary eyes narrowed a Zorellian expression of complete diplomatic checkmate. The human ambassador has demonstrated qualities our own histories celebrate in our greatest heroes, the Queen continued. Yet when these same qualities appear in another species, you dismiss them as anomalous rather than recognize them as virtues we share. Perhaps it is not humans who are evolutionarily stagnant, but those who cannot adapt to new understandings. Lady Vertax, for the first time in her 142-cycle political career, had no response. The Council voted unanimously to elevate the Human-Zorellian Alliance to Tier 1 status, a designation previously reserved for species with whom we shared at least 60% genetic compatibility. Tradition had been not merely bent but thoroughly reconfigured. All because one fragile human had defied probability and self-preservation in a 4.2-second act of inexplicable courage. 37 days after the assassination attempt, Ambassador Mercer was finally deemed sufficiently recovered for the Kirvash ceremony, an ancient ritual so rarely performed that even I, as royal historian, had to consult the ancestral archives for proper protocol. I really don't need a ceremony, Mercer protested as royal attendants fitted him with traditional Zorellian ceremonial armor, modified to accommodate his bizarre human proportions. On Earth, we just say thank you and maybe send a fruit basket. Grand Chamberlain Lorix looked personally offended. Ambassador, the Kirvash is not merely a thank you. It is the sacred acknowledgement of a life debt, performed only 16 times in our 12,000-cycle recorded history. The last recipient was Emperor Zovax the Magnificent. It saved his mate from a quantum singularity collapse by personally stabilizing the event horizon. And I just jumped in front of some arrows, Mercer muttered. Hardly comparable. You misunderstand, Lorix said, adjusting the ceremonial bioluminescent paint on Mercer's face with visible disapproval. The Kirvash is not measured by the technical complexity of the act, but by its purity of intention and the value of the life preserved. You acted without calculation, without advantage, and saved our sovereign. In the ancient scales of honor, this weighs most heavily. The ceremony itself was spectacular even by Zorellian standards. The Grand Hall had been transformed with living light sculptures and resonance crystals that amplified the harmonic frequencies of the royal choir. 5,000 nobles and dignitaries attended, their bioluminescent formal markings creating rippling patterns of light throughout the chamber. Mercer, to his credit, managed the 3-hour procession with remarkable composure, though he later confessed he'd been mentally reciting baseball statistics to distract himself from the overwhelming sensory experience. When he finally reached the central dais, Queen Liratha awaited, her form elevated on the ancestral platform, surrounded by the 7 sacred harmonizers whose resonant tones supposedly connected the present moment to the quantum echoes of our species' past. Ambassador Jake Mercer of Earth, the Queen intoned, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic architecture. You have preserved the continuity of the Zorellian crown and demonstrated the highest virtues recognized by our ancient laws. The debt owed cannot be quantified by material reward. Mercer bowed awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Your Majesty, seeing you safe is reward enough. The Queen's bioluminescence flickered with what appeared to be amusement. Noble sentiment, Ambassador, but the Kirvash demands a tangible acknowledgement of the life debt. Traditionally, the one who saves a royal life is granted their deepest desire, provided it lies within the Empire's power to bestow. Really? I don't need. Our xenobiologists, the Queen continued, overriding his protest, have developed something unprecedented. Something that, according to your private medical records, addresses a matter of personal significance to you. The grand scientist stepped forward, carrying an ornate container that pulsed with a soft blue light. This, Queen Liratha announced, is a genetic compatibility matrix specifically designed to bridge the biochemical gap between human and Zorellian biology. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Even the sacred harmonizers briefly fell silent. Ambassador Mercer's medical data revealed a hereditary condition that would prevent him from having offspring with members of his own species, the Queen explained. This matrix will not only cure that condition but expand his reproductive compatibility to include Zorellian genetic profiles. Mercer's face displayed that bizarre human color-changing reaction, blushing. They call it as understanding dawned. Your Majesty, he said carefully, are you saying this would allow humans and Zorellians to bond? It would allow you to bond, she clarified, her primary eyes holding his gaze while her secondary eyes scanned the shocked assembly. Should you choose to accept this gift, and should you find a Zorellian who wishes to explore such a union? The political implications exploded through the assembly like a subspace detonation. A human-Zorellian pairing would not merely be unprecedented, it would fundamentally redefine our understanding of interspecies relations. And the fact that the Queen had personally overseen the development of this technology sparked immediate speculation about her own intentions. Senior Noble Lord Craxus actually fainted, his ceremonial staff clattering to the floor in a breach of protocol so severe it would normally result in banishment from court. Nobody noticed. Mercer, demonstrating that peculiar human ability to find humor in moments of extreme significance, simply smiled and said, "That's quite a step up from a fruit basket." The Queen's 4 hands performed the ancient gesture of offering palms up, fingers extended. The choice is yours, Ambassador. The gift is offered without obligation. What happened next would be debated in political circles for generations. Ambassador Mercer, ignoring centuries of protocol, climbed the 3 steps to the ancestral platform, an act normally punishable by immediate execution, and took the Queen's upper hands in his. I accept, he said simply, with profound gratitude and hope for what this might mean for both our peoples. The Queen's bioluminescence surged to an intensity that temporarily overloaded the chamber's recording systems. When the visual feed restored, history had already been irrevocably altered. One standard solar cycle later, the galaxy's political landscape has transformed so dramatically that my job as royal historian has become almost unbearably interesting. After centuries of documenting tedious diplomatic minutiae and royal lineage disputes, I now struggle to keep pace with the cascade of unprecedented events. The bonding ceremony between Queen Liratha and former ambassador, now royal consort Jake Mercer, shattered every attendance record in imperial history. 17 billion Zorellians watched the live quantum broadcast, while an estimated 4 billion humans did the same. The ceremony blended traditions from both worlds, resulting in a 5-hour spectacle that included both the sacred harmonic convergence and something called a first dance to music that most Zorellians found physically painful. Worth every decibel, Mercer reportedly told the royal composer, who had suffered temporary auditory damage from exposure to human jazz. The political ramifications have been even more remarkable than the ceremony itself. The royal consort's presence in diplomatic negotiations has introduced what humans call out-of-the-box thinking, and what traditional Zorellians call complete disregard for 10,000 years of established protocol. Somehow, this approach has yielded results. The centuries-old territorial dispute with the Proxian hierarchy resolved over what humans call drinks. The deadlocked trade negotiations with the Vega Consortium finalized after Mercer suggested they split the difference and call it a day. Even the Void Fangs have been neutralized not through military action but through a series of public forums where Mercer personally addressed their concerns, admitted to human flaws, and somehow turned their leader into a reluctant ally. Commander Kraz now serves as security liaison for Human-Zorellian cooperative projects, a position that keeps him too busy to plot assassinations. More fascinating still is how Zorellian society has evolved. Human entertainment, once considered primitive and confusing, now dominates our cultural streams. Zorellian fashion has incorporated elements of human asymmetry. The Royal Academy's most popular course is Human Instinctive Decision-Making, Evolutionary Bug or Feature? Young Zorellians have begun adopting human mannerisms, particularly their expressive vocalizations. Walking through the Imperial Plaza, one can now hear Zorellian hatchlings attempting human laughter and sarcasm, often with anatomically impossible results. The Interspecies Genetic Compatibility Program has expanded beyond the Royal Research Labs. 17 human-Zorellian pairings have been officially recognized, with more pending approval. The first hybrid offspring are expected within 2 cycles, creating an entirely new category in our meticulously maintained evolutionary records. Of course, not everyone embraces these changes. The Conservative Heritage Coalition still protests what they call evolutionary dilution. Last week, they presented a petition to the Royal Council with over 10,000 signatures demanding a return to traditional Zorellian values. Queen Liratha, displaying her mate's gift for succinct communication, responded, noted, "The galaxy moves forward regardless." The petition was archived in the same historical database that contains the security footage of Mercer's original act of heroism. Future historians may find it illuminating to compare the two, one showing resistance to change, the other demonstrating how change often arrives uninvited, in unexpected forms. As for the royal consort himself, the physical scars from his injuries remain visible. He refused regenerative treatment, claiming they were conversation starters. The neurotoxin left subtle traces in his neurological system, occasionally causing his left hand to tremble. When asked if he regrets his impulsive action, he invariably responds with that peculiar human expression that combines bared teeth with genuine emotion, "Best career move I ever made." And so, as royal historian, I am obligated to document this most improbable of conclusions, the mighty Zorellian Empire, which has existed for 12 millennia. He conquered 7 star systems and developed quantum-fold technology. He has been fundamentally transformed by 4.2 seconds of human recklessness. The universe, it seems, has a sense of humor after all. Perhaps the most fitting summary comes from the official historical record, which I personally entered into the Eternal Archives on the 276th day of the 12,047th cycle of the Zorellian Empire, a human diplomat with no natural defenses, redundant organs. Her rational self-preservation instinct changed the course of galactic history by doing something our species would consider absurdly simple, yet that incomprehensibly brave. He stepped in front of flying arrows to save an alien queen. The reward, as it turned out, was worth every scar.